Welcome to Disruptive Successor, a show for next generation leaders in family businesses and entrepreneurs who want to disrupt the status quo and take their existing business to a whole new level. We all know that what got us here isn't going to get us there. This show will provide inspiration, advice, and resources to help you create massive impact. This podcast is sponsored by myself, Jonathan Goldhill, and my company, the Goldhill Group, where we provide coaching for growing companies. I'm Jonathan Goldhill, and my purpose is simple: to guide entrepreneurial leaders in family businesses towards more freedom and fulfillment. I want entrepreneurs to get clarity around the changes that will make them and their businesses more successful so they can experience the same freedom I've enjoyed in my life. Our proven practices challenge business owners to think differently about their business and how they're running it, and quite literally become game changers in our clients' companies. Learn more at thegoldhillgroup.com website, where you can schedule your free strategy session. Hi, Jonathan Goldhill here with another episode of the Disruptive Successor Podcast. And today's guest is someone I met through the Center for Family Business, Cal State University Fullerton's program. Mm-hmm. She is passionate about educating and mentoring next generation leaders because she is herself a next generation leader in a family business. As a transformational business leader and certified futurist, Jenny Dinnen, along with her twin sister, run the MacKenzie Corporation. Mm-hmm. She took over from her father. We're going to listen to her story as a G2 entrepreneur, and we'll learn a little bit more about what she does running customer insights firm for clients small and large. Jenny, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So let's start off with, well, give your elevator pitch. Tell us what MacKenzie Corp is so people know, and just so our listeners understand, you're a company of been 10 to 25 employees, so a small business.
Yep.
And you took over from your dad. What was the company that your dad created, and what is it today?
Man, yeah. So MacKenzie Corporation, we, I think back in the day, so data analytics, customer insights, and really since the very beginning, we help our customers and clients leverage the data that they have internally, typically sales and marketing data, to make better business decisions. So that started 35 years ago, sales data, industry data, that type of thing. Fast forward, we're still doing the same thing, right? Of empowering businesses to make better business decisions. The entire data analytics, customer insights world has changed drastically in the last 35 years, but still, and really leaning in hard in the customer insight space, a lot around customer experience. So working with marketing teams to maximize their marketing mix, sales team, where to focus our efforts, those types of things.
Wow, that sounds like really sophisticated stuff for small businesses. What did it look like years ago? Was information just on file cards and handwritten notes? And 35 years ago was before
everything.
Before technology, computers, and certainly technology programs to capture a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, I'll say one of my very first memories. So obviously family business started in the bonus room of our house. I'm actually born and raised here in Orange County. But my dad had one of those huge, I don't even know, bigger than the screen here, but huge printers, plotter printers. And he would plot out maps of where the sales were for the companies. So we would plot out, and I'd, go to sleep to these like chung, 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 and he'd be plotting out these huge maps. I can't even imagine now. But just kind of evolved through time, right? Of what it is. I will say, I talk a lot of, running a customer insights data analytics company is very, very exciting right now. It's also crushingly overwhelming trying to keep up with everything that's happening in this space. Mm-hmm. So it has definitely been a ride.
And so for someone listening to this and trying to paint themselves in the picture, who typically hires you? What type of clients or customers are you working with? And what might be an example of an engagement you're doing?
Yeah. So, I mean, kind of a wide variety. We do a lot in the power sports world. So like Yamaha Motor has been a client since actually from day one. They were one of our very first clients. So on the motor, so motorcycles, ATVs, boats, water, not the music side of things. So typically where there's a large purchase, that it takes a bit of time to get the customer in, then having the customer retention. Definitely in the power sports space, large purchase like Great Park Neighborhoods, doing some stuff with City of Hope at the moment, Club Pilates we worked with before. So where there's a larger purchase, longer period of time where you want to be staying in touch with the customers. We do a bit in the sports world. We worked with Staples Center, more so in their luxury suite where there's a larger purchase than the one-time ticket, and then a bit in the nonprofit world. It's kind of a passion project. Yep.
And so the traditional model that your business still follows, are you making phone calls to the buyers to find out like why did they make the buying decision? Or are you talking to the resellers to find out what information they're getting from their customers? How does that work?
Yeah, definitely not on the phone. And that was one of the things back in the day, and nothing wrong with that world. It's just not ours. But so multiple things. A lot of times, and so I'll say, on the data analytics side of things, most companies are sitting on a tremendous amount of information, right? So we're looking at things like sales data, industry data. You mentioned, if there's warranty registration, kind of said partners there. We do a lot in the OEM space. So when, if there's the OEM partner with all the dealerships and then the end consumer. So we'll get information from different partners there. So if there's customer data, we'll be taking a look at that if companies are sitting on that, and or industry data to take a look at. If we kind of flip to the other side and take a look at trying to gather information from consumers in the customer insight space. Back in the day, definitely a lot of in-mail surveys. My first job growing up was opening up the mail, data entering all of the surveys, all of that. We've transitioned quite a bit. So online is mainly how we're doing. So we do not do phone surveys. Got
it. All right. Well, that's a great lead in. So MacKenzie Corporation is the company. Enough about the company. Let's talk about family business. Okay.
Yes.
So as a child growing up in your household, your father's running this business. Did he involve you and your sister as teenagers? Were you, like you just said, were you licking envelopes, or were you opening mail, or were you entering data? Were you starting to understand a little bit about the business by doing the grunt work? And
it's funny growing up. So both my parents, I talk about my dad a lot, but my mom owned her own business as well. So I had two entrepreneur parents. She had a meeting and events company. He had MacKenzie. So we grew up in an entrepreneur family, definitely working 7 days a week, definitely at the office all the time. Actually, I had my two girls here yesterday at the office. So we're starting the Gen 3 here. But I think we went to work with dad and we went to work with mom. So growing up, but we didn't actually know what he did. Quite honestly, I knew that he traveled a lot and I knew that he worked with on computers, but I had no idea what he did. In high school, we definitely then started doing opening the mail instead of working at Wild Rivers and some of the fun, at the beach or any of that kind of stuff. Started getting more involved in it, but it was never a family business. This was dad's business to support his family. Even, I think we'll fast forward a little bit when we started talking about transition, but it was never his goal to create a legacy company. His goal was to support his family. And so I think even though we kind of say it's an unspoken rule, which I love, but it was never come and work in the family business and take over the family business. It was go away to college, which we both went away, and go do your own thing. Like, this is not come stay at the family business and be here. He very much encouraged us to go, learn, explore, work for big companies, see different things. So I don't even think it was till after college that I even knew what he did, which seems odd.
That's funny. And by the way, this is not your story is not atypical of clients that I work with, people that are on this show that are running businesses. Their parents were what I call technician entrepreneurs.
Yes.
And they were basically their purpose was to put food on the table and pay the mortgage or the rent. And if they were successful, get a second home. But they didn't think of that in terms of what's their legacy or, transition to the next generation. But very often times the kids were on the job site, or
Yes.
seeing the work
Yes.
that was being done. And then when they come out of college, they think like, okay, well, I could do this career, or, maybe
I
there's an
think,
opportunity to take over or get involved with.
yeah.
So tell us, yes, what
Yeah, I
was
think,
that
I
like?
worked at Home Depot or HD Supply down in San Diego and HSBC Bank. So some big companies and worked there and, and then up into senior positions. And I think what I also saw, and I don't think I realized until I was then, I'll say in the real world, is how well my parents treated their teammate or their team members or their staff, but team members and what they did and how the community they created and what it was. And I didn't realize how badly I wanted that because I grew up in it. So
Mhm.
I just assumed growing up, this is how all businesses ran. This is, we've had some people here that have worked with us for 30 years, 20 plus years. Like we were all family. And so I think it was fantastic to go out and see kind of the other side of things. And I think that's a very good eye-opening piece, and so many great, amazing things that you can learn there. But then I realized, okay, wait a second, if I want to be going up in senior management, if I'm working this hard, if I'm doing these things, wait a second, why aren't I doing this for myself and for my own family business? So Kate and I came back, I think between, can't remember what year, 2007, something, as an analyst, and came back and kind of learned some of the, I wouldn't say grunt work, but came back as an employee and worked for a little bit and said, wait a second, this is a pretty awesome business of what you're doing here. Like, let's learn more. And then left for a little bit. And then, kind of fast forward, which we can get to, but then Kate and I came back and kind of wrote a business plan to say, okay, Dad, we want to come and take this over, because he started hinting at, okay, when this is over, he always joked he was going to shut the lights off, and whoever's the last one out the door will just lock the door and then just shut down the business. And we're like, this does not make any sense. No, but in his mind, support his family, get to a certain spot, get his girls through college. It's just Kate and I. And so he was accomplishing that, a very accountant kind of guy.
Were you in your mid-20s when you wrote this business plan, thereabouts, or give us, the listeners,
late 20s. Yeah.
Late 20s.
Late 20s. Yeah. So went away for a little bit, which I think is fantastic. I really do. And even when I chat with a lot of people up at Chapman and Fullerton and students, I said, there is so many blessings between big and small companies. And I think there's so many good things for both. Large companies, the learning that you had, the networking that you have, the ways of getting things done, now even selling into and having clients that are large corporations, I can understand. When I go to meetings and they are like triple booked and they don't even know what we're talking about. When we've been working on something for so long. So I can understand that mindset. I think it was a really good thing. But yeah, I was down in San Diego, and then I was in Solana Beach. Kate was in Oceanside. The office was in Irvine, and we took the train, I think, for 4 or 5 years up here. So I'd get on Solana Beach. She got on Oceanside. We took the train up. And then we finally said, okay, maybe that's where we wrote our business plan, on the train.
Did she come in as an analyst as well, or did she take a different
came
position?
in under the incentive department. So she ran a different arm of the business, or came in under a different arm of the business. Yeah.
Okay. So you sound like you were more on the inside and she was more marketing or externally focused. Is that?
Actually the opposite. Yeah.
Okay. Got it backwards. Okay.
Yep. So she, so in total side note, but Kate and I went to different high schools growing up. We hated each other, did not get along at all, could not be more opposite, and still couldn't be more opposite. And so I thought, this is never going to work at all. But we are all about a lot of the assessments and personality assessments, Strength Finder, those type of things. And once we started realizing our strengths. So I know you're a traction guy. I think I'm the visionary. She's the integrator. Like, I've got a new idea every 5 minutes. I have an idea jar on my desk that she gave me, because I'm not allowed to add new ideas to the team until she then can implement it. So as we were, and you had mentioned at the beginning, the Center for Family Business, I will say, when we started hinting at the idea, of taking over the family business or coming into the family business, a lot of people said, don't do it. You're going to ruin your family. It's going to be awful. Like, there's just so much fighting. And I think everyone has a story. When I worked with my brother-in-law, or when I worked with my friend or these fighting kind of stories. And so maybe it's the analysts in us and the planners in us, but we started reaching out to say, what support could we get? And that's where then we found the Center for Family Business. So 10 plus years ago.
That's fantastic.
And hired a transition consultant and said, okay, if we're going to do this, what are all the things that we need to do? And so it was taking those personality tests, writing and mapping out what is your role, and how are you going to figure out how to work together? So we were getting ahead of some of the issues, I guess.
So it was a lot of what I call succession planning.
Yes.
Which is coaching up the next generation of leaders to figure out like where they fit, where their zone of genius, if you will, and how to get into that zone. Yeah. So that's great. And it's
I will say too, sorry, just real quick on that, and maybe it's where you were going, but one of the interesting things, because when I used to think of succession planning, it was okay, like dad will train like the next generation, or whoever it is, and they'll be training, and our dad is a genius on so many levels. But one thing that I really found, and maybe this is just in our personality, was he didn't know how to train the next generation because he was the entrepreneur. I think G1 to G2 is so interesting because you're taking an entrepreneur that's just the tactical in the weeds guy, and then you're handing it over to a G2 that it falls on our shoulders to do like systems and process and whatnot. He didn't know how to train us. And it's nothing against him, but I think that's where people get stuck sometimes, is then saying, okay, well, teach me how to do this. And so it was huge. And I will always, Joanne Norton, our transition consultant, and being part of the center, getting those outside perspective and having someone help us to say, this is what you should be doing, and getting that outside perspective, because we sure as heck didn't know how to do it.
Well, I totally get that, because when I wrote my book, it was the original title I was going to rip on Marshall Goldsmith's book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There.
100%.
Because, my concept was like, your dad or whoever, maybe it's your mom, but in this case, your dad was great and knew how to get the business to where it is, but has no idea how to train you in what you need to learn to get to the business to the next level. And so it's such a different thing. I only work almost with G2 entrepreneurs transitioning from G1 because I understand that mindset. And then my publisher said, hey, let's come up with a different title. Let's call it Disruptive Successor. And which I liked, which was, because you have to be a disruptor to the way
100%.
your dad was doing the business. I mean, if you were still doing it the way your dad was doing it, I mean, heck, I had guests on here, the Grossman brothers, they're fourth G4 entrepreneurs. I mean, they'd still be selling envelopes and letterhead, and that doesn't work. So
I think that's a huge, huge thing. Cause I listened to that one with those fourth generation. I'm so intrigued, going from G2 to G3 is so different. It's kind of like when you have kids, one kid to two kids, whatnot. But I think there's something very unique. So I love that you're helping specifically from G1 to 2, and G1 people, I'll kind of say, are the entrepreneurs. I think before they're even a G1, they are problem solvers. They're going to figure it out and they get it done and they're hands in and they're doing these things. And so I do think it's sometimes difficult. It takes a certain personality to say, I don't know this one, how to then hand this over to change it. I mean, I will say, as much as it was like, I'm kind of making it very smooth. We just wrote a business plan and it was a perfect transition. It is not. Even eyes wide open, knowing going in, dad saying he's ready. That is that's a tight hold when you've run a business for 30 some years to then say, okay, here's my baby, to hand it over. And that transition period, when you do succession planning, there's, I think there's the 3 that's actual ownership. There's, control and power and control. There's 3 different ones. And I think that the ownership maybe is the easiest, on paper. Here you go.
It's like, let's get in front of a lawyer and let's figure out the mechanics of this.
But that power and control is a little
harder. So just for people listening, so the ownership is easy to transfer when the business is under a certain value, where the parent can just gift it as part of their lifetime, gift tax exemption, unless they own a lot of real estate or some other, business interests. So that's an easy one.
Yes.
Power and control. Let's talk about how that transition went down in your family's business.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. It took longer than we thought. I think Dad, he said, yes, I'm ready. I'm ready to let go, ready to do all those things. Then I think we were also infusing a bit more excitement and energy into it and changing things.
Yeah.
It's difficult for employees that have worked for somebody for a very long time.
Right.
And because he was still there. So we switched over ownership, that Kate and I owned 48%, and he owned 4%.
Great.
And really that was then for the tiebreaker to be able to have.
That's great.
But he then had an employment contract with us for 5 years. So then he stayed on.
Wow.
And I will say it's hard. It's hard when the owner, he would always say, I'll just be in the meetings. I'll be like a fly on the wall. I'm like, Dad, you're like an elephant on the wall that nobody can ignore, and not to the detriment of him. But I think in regular businesses, which is different than a family business, when you get a new CEO, the old CEO doesn't sit around and doesn't stay there for the next 5 years.
No
matter what, the employees are going to look over there to say, how was it done? What do you think?
Yeah. That CEO was gotten rid of as quickly as the new CEOs can get rid of that person.
And that's right or wrong, because I will say the benefit of being able to have that legacy. Oh my gosh. I mean, there's so much stuff that he learned. He's like, yeah, no, we tried that. It didn't work. We tried that. But then balancing, then saying, well, no, I know we tried that 10 years ago, but the world is different. Email is now a thing, so it's trying to then balance it a little bit. So I'd say power and control were harder while he was still in the business, for sure.
5 years is a long time. I remember when I announced to a friend that I was going to get married in 9 months, he said, John, 9 months is a really long engagement. You might want to rethink that. It's like, so is 5 years too long? Was it too long in your case? Would you have done it? Like, what would you tell if you were talking to Jenny of, pre 48% ownership? What would you tell that girl?
I don't know. It's so funny because I'll answer the question, but going through it, we went to the center and we went to our partners and friends. And I said, show me the example of the next gen that took it over while mom or dad or the previous generation is still actively involved. Show me, because if I can see that it's been done, then I have hope that it'll work. We did not find other super successful examples of it.
Okay. I'll have to introduce you to some of my clients because they're still, father's still in it. But really, I think it takes a unique parent to be able to step back and just say, oh, I'm here. I will do what I'm supposed to do. And, I'm not running the show. And no one even looks to that person to run the show any longer.
Right. And I think though, but if they can be in a different role, the thought leader out there or the expert in and whatever. And I will say then, and that's what Dad then kept on as. He's an expert and we still contract for certain projects. I mean, there's just some stuff that he just knows and gets. I mean, just today, a client thing came through and it was like, okay, right over here, some legal work, some certain things that I cannot hire out for.
Right.
So I think if someone were to do it, I would say that having very clear boundaries and having the thing that I've realized through this entire transition is having really open and honest conversations. Never before did I think that I had to chat with my mom and dad about money and finances and, what's going on, and say what's really going on. Right. Because we can have these surface conversations, but unless we get to the root of what's happening or what's going on or what they want to have happen, not just what they think that we want to hear, then we're just going to be going in circles. So I think having, is it radical candor, of where you're at, I think you have to get to that point. And I think a lot of times in family, just in general, in family businesses, things get kind of just skirted under the rug and not dealt with. They will come out if they're not dealt with.
And I think, and in certain size businesses, I think there's formality that's needed. I mean, you've got a 4% shareholder. He's or she is entitled to know, shareholder distributions. How are these arrived at? Transparency in the financial statements. Let's share with you our business plan, the direction that we're going in, our pro forma. It's like, wow, I got this minority shareholder we have to be accountable to a little bit because, the thing there's only one. It makes it easy, but
I am so inspired by listening to these. The family business community, just is so incredible, and listen to these stories of G3, G4, G5. And it's mind-boggling to me when they're like, oh, we've got 100 shareholders. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
already thinking about our next generation G3.
And your next generation, I think, is pretty young. I
Yeah.
gather.
Yeah. The
So,
oldest, freshman. We got a little bit of time.
yeah. Do you have a vision for the business, for the future of it? Do you have a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal that, sees this thing out 15 to 30 years where there might be another generation involved? I mean,
For sure. I mean, I think that in general, I mean, we've got a few different things. I think that with a family business, so with MacKenzie, for sure, in this space right now, I think Kate and I are really stepping into our own of being thought leaders. Dad was very behind the scenes. Like, you just get your work done, especially in the data world and the research world, you're kind of behind the scenes. It's difficult. I mean, we do product development surveys and we do these things. I can't go out and share our results of our survey because it's proprietary information, so it was always very behind the scenes. And he was very much like, even in the nonprofit giving, you just quietly do your work and that's what you do. So that's kind of how we were brought up. We're now leaning a bit more into being thought leaders in this space. You'd kind of mentioned the strategic foresight and future stuff. Like, I believe that this customer insights industry, there is so much potential here. I think that, without getting too big or whatever, but I believe that a lot of the issues that we're facing in the world is because people's voices are not being heard. I think that people want to be connected with others, with brands. They want to authentically feel as though brands and corporations care about them and they're part of the process. And if we could change the way brands engage with their customers and have it being a two-way conversation as opposed to just marketing the heck out of people, how do we include their voice in the business planning process? That to me is like the most exciting piece. So the future for us is I want to work with people that truly care about incorporating the voice of the customer. And I want to change the way our industry works. Talk about a big, hairy goal.
That is, it's not immeasurable maybe, but it's certainly an incredible objective. And so one of the things I talk about in my book is that the next gen leader needs to disrupt either the business model, the way the business is being done. So that could mean going from just having like a subscription based model. It could mean, being an online only type model. They need to look at the process and or the product, or all three, or the product being the service, same thing. And so I'm really interested in you're the first person I know who's a certified futurist. And for any older listeners who might be familiar with Alvin Toffler, Future Shock, who was a futurist, what is a certified futurist?
Certified futurist, and really around this strategic foresight world. So it's a different way of, and definitely not predicting the future by any way, any way, shape, or form. But how can we better prepare ourselves and prepare our businesses for the future by mapping out scenarios? So coming back to what trends, patterns, values, what shifts are happening today that we can now start then projecting out into the future, projecting out different scenarios. So that we can be better prepared as businesses. There is so much stuff that's happening right now that, quite honestly, a lot of people are saying, man, I would have never predicted this. That is not actually true. Like, we could very easily go back and say, based on what was happening 4 years ago, 8 years ago, certain things, we were for sure on this path. And so I think that businesses, in their strategic planning typically are just very short-sighted. And I think that businesses can be a lot more resilient if we take a much broader swath of predicting, creating these scenarios. So, and we're doing that at MacKenzie. We're doing a future of customer insights project, which is just fun and exciting to look at. It changes my entire way of thinking about things. When something happens, I said, why do you think this is happening? Like, what's the actual underneath? What's actually happening? Not just the surface level stuff. And if this pattern stays, let's take, for a very quick, actually, I was just doing a video a little bit about the new rules of engagement. So in the data space, the amount of distrust in our industry is just mind-boggling. And the amount of people not wanting to share data and what's going on and where are we at. If this trend continues, we are going to have, and so then we kind of played this out in like 3 different scenarios, fortress, market, transformational. If we don't, it'll be a very interesting world for sure.
Wow. Well,
Yes.
I think that being a futurist in your business is part of your disruptive,
100%. Yep.
like secret sauce, if you will. Like
Yes.
it's what makes you guys different, and must be very interesting. Now, I should note, by the way, that your sister is a fraternal twin, not
Yes.
an identical twin. So
Yes.
hence the different paths, divergent thinking, lifestyles, whatever, high schools. I mean, it would be, I think it's really challenging to be co-presidents. In my world, we always think like the hierarchy is like one person's a CEO, maybe there's a president too, but the roles are very different. And in family businesses, what I see is really we divide the world, but okay, you do the inside, I'll do the outside.
Right. Right.
You do sales and marketing, I'll do manufacturing, production, or whatever.
Yep.
And so that makes it easier, unless there's a third sibling. Then it makes.
I don't know how the triplets do it.
Well, maybe one does finance or something, I guess, but something completely different, or technology.
We're a lot of the inside outside, though. I do love, and from your recommendation and whatnot, your traction stuff of having the visionary,
Yep,
and the integrator.
Yep.
Those terms, because inside outside just felt like, because Kate's like, well, I'm outside too. I do things, but I love that visionary and the integrator. It's so key. That just like clicked in so many levels there. She's for sure the integrator. Yes.
Great. And that book that you're referencing is called Rocket Fuel if you want to pick up and read them. And there's so many great examples, at the great companies, Microsoft and Apple. And there was always someone that we know of, a Bill Gates, a Steve Jobs, but there was someone behind the scenes that we don't necessarily know their names, like
making it happen.
Johnny Ive or Steve Ballmer that were making stuff happen and making a lot of stuff that didn't need to happen. Like, okay, let's just put that in the parking lot for now.
I will say too, in kind of the disruptive thing, I think it's so important. I think in family businesses, a lot of times this is the way it's been done. We can't disrupt it. We got to just keep this way. But it is a different mindset of thinking. If we don't change, this is not going to be here in the long run.
Right.
That we're here for the long term. So you need to be thinking. I mean, the world is completely different. So if you don't have someone that's thinking farther out than right now, you're not going to exist in the next few years. At least that's my humble opinion.
Yeah. Well, look, G1, I don't sell business planning to G1s because they don't buy it. G2s buy business planning. They buy process. They buy, and they like tools that are going to help them elevate them. So it all makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
How did your dad take to some of the process, the technology improvements? I mean, I call it the sticky baton syndrome, where he's sort of holding onto the baton, not letting go.
Yeah.
How can you kind of give us like what did it feel like maybe?
Yeah, we did it in a slow transition, which I don't know if I would maybe, part of me says like I would rip the Band-Aid faster because I think we maybe would have been further ahead. But then again, I think it would have caused so much disruption, because the thing is, it's not just with dad, it's with then legacy clients that we have as well, right? That we're not just going to shift. So what we started really doing, what made it an easier transition, was with new clients, new projects. We started doing the new way and the new process,
right?
Which then we got some wins, some credibility. And then it was like, okay, wait a second, we can then start implementing some of these ideas over. So I think then it was easier for him to kind of let go once then we could see, okay, this is working. This is what's happening. I will say as well, what we really tried, even with our entire team, because I think when you talk about a family business, it's not just the literal bloodline. You've got people that have been in these family businesses for a long time, head down, doing their job. Blessing that I have in my world and the work that we do in this kind of futures world is we're always out reading and looking and seeing what others are doing. And so we come back with all these ideas when then you've got other people, God bless them, doing the work and getting things done. And so it's hard to say, hey, we should change. Like the world has changed out there while we're all in here. So creating opportunities for dad to be able to get out, for teammates to be able to go out to be doing training. And even with our Future of Customer Insights, we included the entire team on that project because we wanted them to be bought in on it and not just kind of say, hey guys, we have an entire new way of doing it and start Monday, we're doing it differently. So starting to tease the ideas, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's challenging. At some point, your dad's got to turn to a Yamaha or a big client and say, Jenny and Kate are taking over, and whatever you want to call them, the project managers, or no, they're actually the co-presidents of the company.
Yeah.
That's got to happen.
Yeah. I mean, the first time we sat across with them, to negotiate some contracts, I would give some advice to kind of next gen people is when we sat down and said, hey, we're signing this contract for different things, was not the first time they've seen us. I worked on and Kate worked on projects. And so I think there's something to be said with clients and then even teammates that come back and say, well, hey, you don't really know. I'm like, oh no, I've done that job and I've done that job and I've done that job. I do know of working your way up. There's just something to be said about earning your stripes and understanding. And I think when some of our legacy clients, when we did that baton pass, he felt comfortable. Our clients and our team was like, okay, we're ready. You've proven yourself, I guess. I
think internally, if a next gen leader is taking over from the preceding generation, that what they need to do is set some milestones that are either specific measurables or qualitative things that, they've done this position, they've shown competency in this capability, and the confidence is there with both parties. And it's not a leap of faith, because nothing is scarier than the old generation sort of letting the new generation bet the farm on
I think that bet the farm, that is because it is. I mean, most honestly, a lot of times your entire family wealth. So it's this next generation. Supporting my family, Kate's family, and dad. So you sure as heck better be teed up.
Yep, exactly. And no offense to passionate people in the room who, are good at sales and marketing, like, hey, mom and dad, I'm ready, I can do it. But there's sometimes that false bravado that children have, and they think they can do it. And it I always say, like, the best leader is someone who's really humble. So when a parent is humble, they don't need to own the fact, they don't have to have ownership, power, or control any longer.
Right.
But they can't release it until they know also that their child is humble, because arrogance kills too many deals.
100%. If I think about and where I think it is great. I remember my very first manager job at Home Depot. I applied for the manager. I wanted that role, and Chase, God bless her, the best manager I ever had. I got turned down. She was like, you are not ready for this job.
Wow.
And you don't have the experience. And gosh darn it, I cried and was so sad. But it taught me the best thing is to go back. Like, we don't just have to hand it to them. And I would have flopped in that job. And I learned so much about what I needed to do. So I think having some tough love is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
To say you're not ready.
Yeah. So,
No. I was just going to say, I think, we've kind of covered a lot of topics, but this world, I will say as well, which I'm kind of talking about this, but having this community in this world and people like you and Ed Hart over at the Center for Family and other people that are surrounding and helping others. Because I will say one of the main reasons why we made through, and I think we would not be where we are today without the center and without connecting with other family businesses. And so thank you for your podcast, even of listening to hear these tips and hear these tricks, or like just hear these actual, not even tips and tricks, but actual real life stories. Because sometimes when you're in it and you're the thick of it, you're like, well, it's just because mom and dad don't love me, or it's not because of this. No, this is the process and this is how to go through. And so hearing other people, I feel like this community is so incredible that we all kind of, whenever we get in these like networking rooms or whatnot, we kind of like let our guard down a little bit and really share of like what's actually happening. And so I appreciate this kind of, forum to be able to share these incredible stories. Well,
thank you. And thanks for coming on my show and sharing your story, because there's no cookie cutter. There's no two families are alike, but every business, every family thinks their business, their family is unique, they're different. And it's only because they haven't shared maybe or seen what other
Exactly.
families go through.
Yeah.
And they don't understand that, business might, like all good businesses, have playbooks. And so having a playbook and like if you've put together enough playbooks for enough businesses, you start to see the pattern. I mean, I was a consultant for many years writing business plans and financing packages. And it wasn't until 15 years later that I became a coach, because I realized that a lot of certain size businesses dealt with very similar types of issues.
Yep.
And, different size businesses deal with different types of issues, and you can apply those like a CFO, like an HR, outsourced HR person, a coach can apply those to those different businesses. And you apply it differently, but it's the same tool or, similar methodology.
And why not? I mean, I think Kate and I are just so under the avenue of like, why can't I just learn from other people? Like, I mean, I could sit here for like the next 5-10 years and like sort this out, but like, wait a second, why don't we just lean into other experts in this space and learn from theirs and then keep going? I mean, it just,
and it's doing a bit of both.
Yes.
But it's all, having a coach definitely can shorten the path to getting there. And going it alone. Mentors, coaches, peers. I'm a big fan of all those types of learning things, and do them all at the same time. If you can afford it, time and, money wise, it's great.
Exactly.
But you also have to be in the trenches doing it. You have to try and practice and fail, because you learn as much from those as well.
Yeah, one of the things, I mean, again, maybe I don't know the last thing or whatnot, but one of the things I think that's so interesting about this time right now, I mean, everything's been flipped upside on its head in the last year, but it also is, I don't know, it's giving us even a freedom, when you say like disruptive, of trying new things. I feel like if we're open and honest and we're communicating with our customers and our peers and our people around us of like, we're checking this out. Like, what do you think? Like now people are giving companies a bit more grace to like, let's sort it out. Let's try it. Like now I think is the best time to be disruptive. I mean, if you come out of this pandemic and you're doing the exact same thing that you were doing a year and a half ago, well, then quite honestly, like what in the world, like this is, I mean, what you have there, disruptive, it is the best time to pivot and see what can happen. There's so many opportunities.
I think it was Jack Welch who said that if change is happening on the outside faster than change is happening on the inside, then the end is near in sight. And so,
he was pretty clear and to the point on most things.
Exactly. Jenny, how can people reach you if they want to know more about MacKenzie Corporation?
Yeah, MackenzieCorp.com is our website. I think our Instagram, MacKenzie Corp. Jenny Dinnen on LinkedIn, pretty active on there.
Great. We'll have all your contact information in the show notes. People want to get a hold of you,
love it.
Talk to you about your story. I know you're passionate about and curious about other family members. So I encourage other family members to reach out to you if they're dealing with, twins or siblings, or, maybe running into problems with the sticky baton or succession. I'm always here as well to help. So Jenny, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
All right. So Jonathan Goldhill, another episode in the can of the Disruptive Successor Podcast. If you like this show, please share it, subscribe. And if you want more information, grab a copy of my book, Disruptive Successor, at disruptivesuccessor.com. Thank you. This podcast is sponsored by myself, Jonathan Goldhill, and my company, the Goldhill Group, where we provide coaching for growing companies. I'm Jonathan Goldhill, and my purpose is simple: to guide entrepreneurial leaders in family businesses towards more freedom and fulfillment. I want entrepreneurs to get clarity around the changes that will make them and their businesses more successful, so they can experience the same freedom I've enjoyed in my life. Our proven practices challenge business owners to think differently about their business and how they're running it, and quite literally become game changers in our clients' companies. Learn more at thegoldhillgroup.com website, where you can schedule your free strategy session. Thank you for joining us on the Disruptive Successor Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, review,
and share with a friend who would benefit from the message. If you're interested in picking up a copy of my book, Disruptive Successor, go to disruptivesuccessor.com.